Minister, thank you for your opening statement in relation to the schedule. And Minister, as you know, because of the technical way this is moved, I can't actually speak to my amendment later. So I want to use the opportunity to actually speak to my amendment. But can I say, Minister, we're just after having the debate in relation to rare diseases, and we had the second stage debate here last Thursday, which was very timely. And we now had the debate here, and we're back dealing with this issue now, because what is before us here has huge implications in terms of the development of orphan drugs, not just in this country, but across Europe and globally. And having a unified patent system here in Europe will hopefully ensure that more orphan drugs, the more investment goes into the development of orphan drugs, and then that hopefully we can actually get access to them. Now, in the debate earlier on here, one of the issues that was raised was the issue of reimbursement through the Department of Health for orphan drugs. And of course, the reality is that if we don't have legislation like this, if this referendum were not passed, then the cost of accessing those orphan drugs will be much higher. And hopefully one of the impacts of the passage of this referendum, if it is passed, is that it will make access to orphan drugs cheaper. And hopefully that will be one outcome from it. Now, Minister, look, the reality is that the referendum and the decision on this has a profound impact on industrial innovation and the broader Irish economy in particular. And the Unified Patent Court represents a significant opportunity for innovation-led growth in this country, enhanced intellectual property protection and broader economic prosperity in the country. Now, the discussions here last week underscored the potential benefits of the passage of this amendment by the people in a referendum in June. However, the debate also highlighted the challenges, such as the risks of poor communication, potential public confusion, and the general lack of interest in the technicalities of this amendment. And this may very well, Minister, I believe, become more prominent if either or both of the referendums that take place on Friday are not passed. And there is a possibility of that based on the current opinion polls. And there's a potential for a kickback from the public because of the lack of proper engagement in relation to those two particular questions. And it may result in an even bigger struggle in actually getting this particular amendment passed in June, considering that it's competing with the local elections, considering that it's competing with the European elections, the Mayor of Limerick vote, and potentially a general election as well on the same day. And I know that surprises some members here in the House, but there is the potential that there could be a general election. Now, in that context, Minister, a lot of people will go into the polling booth at the beginning of June. They'll be handed this ballot paper that says yes or no. And they'll say, oh, what's this about? And the presiding officer in the polling booth will say to them, oh, go over and look at the notice in the corner. And they go over and look at the notice in the corner, and it says, you're being asked in this referendum if Ireland may ratify the agreement on a unified patent court. And 99.9% of people that read that sentence will say, what in God's name is a unified patent court? So what I'm asking, Minister, is that we flesh that out and that we actually at least explain to people that it is to facilitate the establishment of a streamlined patent system, making it easier to protect inventions across the 24 participating EU countries. Now, I don't think that that is biased in one way or the other, but I think it is demeaning the importance of this particular referendum if we leave the advice that's been given to the electorate when they go into the polling booth to that simple sentence that's there at the moment. And that's why, Minister, I'm strongly urging the government to take on board the amendment that I have tabled here, because I think it does at least provide some basic, simple information on what people are being asked to make the decision on. And I think it's imperative that over the coming weeks that we all make an effort to educate and to inform the public about the significance of this, the impact of this across different sectors of our economy. As I said last week in relation to the agri-tech sector, as I've said here tonight in terms of orphan drugs, the access to orphan drugs, the cost of orphan drugs, and the impact that this can have on the rare disease community, but also the huge employment impact this has right across the economy. So I'd ask you, Minister, to think about the amendment that I put forward, and I'd encourage you to accept my particular amendment. Thank you.
I would like to. No, I think it merits a response, Deputy Naughten. I just wasn't sure if procedurally I was in a position to do so. Look, Deputy Naughten, I think it's fairly obvious from our many engagements over this topic, both in the Chamber and beyond, that I fully appreciate the sentiment behind the amendment proposal, the comments by both yourself and Deputy O'Reilly, and I don't just appreciate it, I probably would largely agree with it on a personal point of view, but I can't support it, and I'll give you a very clear reason why, and I'll give you kind of 2 points on that regard, Deputy Naughten. 1 point and 1 commitment, if that's okay. Firstly, the statement for the information of voters is intended to set out the proposal that voters are being asked to vote on. The statement has been drafted by the Office of the Parliamentary Counsel in the Office of the Attorney General. Explaining the subject matter of referendum is a specific function of the Electoral Commission, and in recent weeks we've seen them certainly come to the fore. Basically, the conclusion, Deputy, is that to expand on the text that has been presented before you, which was craftily drafted, would, in the view of the McKenna-McChrystal principles, the proposed wording of the amendment put forward by yourself would not be appropriate. And that's why I have to be guided by that, as you can understand. But I appreciate that's not the answer you want to hear, and I'm more than happy to engage on that further. But I suppose the commitment to you, Deputy, first of all, is the task of the Referendum Commission to make sure this is adequately explained. Funded to do so is a gimme from the government more generally. I laid out in the House last week that I have the good fortune, for what it matters, to be appointed the Director of Elections for Fine Gael in this. I believe Senator Malcolm Byrne is taking on this role for Fianna Fáil. Other parties might like to do so in due course. We're already put in place 4 regional meetings through the party, working with stakeholders, information meetings. We'll be spending a considerable amount of money informing and encouraging people to not just vote, but to vote in favour of this. I'd be more than happy to open those engagements to people of all political persuasions and none, and to make them as open, as transparent. I've already, as you might have heard, when we were together in Monksland and Roscommon last week, I made the case quite clearly in that particular company about the need to discuss workers in that company, about how important this is to their jobs, but also how important it is to the patients. Particularly given that company was doing so much work on orphan drugs that you mentioned, the patients and the would-be patients in due course. It's a big undertaking. I personally think holding this on the same day, particularly as the European elections, is a good thing. It'll increase the level of turnout, and the fact that when people are thinking about wider European debates, they might take this into a context. So I appreciate that's not to the exact point that you made, but you can appreciate where I'm coming from and what I'm bounded by. But I absolutely will wholeheartedly undertake that commitment, and if you'd like to establish something in your part of the world in terms of a forum or a meeting, I'd be more than happy to come with no political hang-ups or political agendas at all, to address that, to inform and encourage on whatever terms you deem fit.
Minister, can I say that, leaving everything to the Referendum Commission, I don't think is the right way to do that. I think we might be having a post-mortem here in 2 weeks' time, and we may very well regret taking that particular approach, and it'll be too late in relation to this. Now, look, I'll say it again, and I'm not going to press the point after that, Minister, but having people being handed 3, 4 or 5 ballot papers at the beginning of June, one of which is a referendum. And when people ask, what's this about? And they're directed to a notice in the corner of the polling booth that says, you're being asked in this referendum if Ireland may ratify the agreement on a unified patent court, full stop. A lot of people are going to wonder, what is this about? And no one inside in that room can explain it to them. And all I'm looking for is a simple elaboration of what that is, to say that to facilitate the establishment of a streamlined patent system, making it easier to protect inventions across the 24 participating EU countries. Now, I accept that you may argue in relation to the phraseology that I've used, but I think the phraseology that you're using and that the Attorney General has signed off on is insufficient. It does not provide information. It is an insult to the public to say that this is a provision of information to them regarding the referendum, because it's not. There's no one going to be any the wiser having read that. And I don't want to be here in the middle of June and we'd be surprised because we slipped up in relation to this. And that's my final word on it. Deputy Sherlock.
To respond, I take your point, Deputy Naughten, but you can appreciate where I'm bound at this stage, and I fundamentally do believe we will be back here in June with a clear decision, because there will be a large-scale information campaign going beyond simply what's put on a ballot paper or pinned to a wall in a polling station. And we all know that a lot of people, particularly in Ireland, they take votes seriously, they take elections seriously, they take referenda seriously, they make it their business to inform themselves, and there is a great responsibility on themselves. Deputy Sherlock, I'm concerned about your reluctance, but I do welcome the statement by your party colleague, Deputy Nash, last week that the Labour Party were, of course, supporting this referendum. And I think you would understand the delays that happened to this, which I went through at the second stage of the debate, delays beyond our control, one of which, of course, was the UK's decision to withdraw from the European Union and therefore withdraw from the formulation of this court. As it stands, if a patent is a piece of technology or drug is developed with cross-border cooperation, it is registered for a patent in the jurisdiction where it's registered. The patent can be registered if it's in Northern Ireland with the UK Patents Office, or if it's done, this jurisdiction is registered with our Patent Office. That system won't change, Deputy, after this. Rather, what will happen if we do pass this referendum is that Ireland will join 17 other EU member states where the patent will be protected. At the moment, the patent isn't protected in those 17 EU member states. So there is obviously concern about what's going on north-south, but there will be no change to the status quo in that regard. I wish there was, but unfortunately that was a decision taken by 52% of the UK population some years ago.